Thank you very much. Thank you very much for being here today. I really appreciate your interest in this very important topic. I feel like this is one of the most important topics facing all parents and really our entire society, and that is what do we do with our babies in the early years? Because what we do with the babies in our early years will affect the child throughout their entire life. Our society could be a completely different place if we would put more time and energy into our babies. Many infants and toddlers get very little stimulation, and then we end up spending billions of dollars trying to fix all of the problems that are created by not putting energy in the early years of life. So thank you again for being here. What I want to do is actually give you a lot of practical advice that you can use at home with your babies and toddlers so that you can make a difference in your own child's life. First of all, I would like to give you a little bit about my background. I got my master's degree from Penn State University. I've been a teacher or a professor for more than 15 years. I've always been interested in how people learn. And while I was at Penn State University, my wife got pregnant, and I became very fascinated with how babies learn. So I switched my emphasis from adult learning to infant learning. And at Indiana University, I worked in different infant development laboratories, and I applied what I learned to how babies learn about language. Just by chance, I made a video for her to watch while she was a baby because I felt very guilty dropping her off at the babysitter's house. I wanted to stimulate her while the babysitter was busy, while the babysitter was on the phone, or while I would be on the phone, or while I would be reading the paper. I didn't want her just sitting there doing nothing. I also didn't want her watching any regular TV shows or baby videos because most of them are mindless stimulation with objects floating around and listening to music that's not related, and I did not want her doing that. So anyway, what I did was I made a video. On the video, I applied what I knew about how babies learn about objects to language. So I put on the video words that the baby could see, hear, touch, and interact with. So I made a multi-sensory interactive video. I also didn't want her just sitting there watching the TV. I wanted her clapping, waving, doing physical actions along with the video. So I feel very fortunate that I just happened to do this out of parental guilt. And this has completely changed my daughter's life. You'll get to meet her later. She's now 16 years old, and she's already graduated from high school. She's doing extremely well. And she reads at such a high level that she has read so many classics, far more than what I could ever read myself or will ever read for the rest of my life. Even if I started today and read continuously for 40 years, I don't think I could ever read the same way that both of my children read. And so what I would like is, those of you who have babies and toddlers and even 3- and 4-year-olds, I would like for you to have the same kind of experience, because the difference you can make in your own child's life is so great early in life. And the reason it's so great is because about 75% of the mass of your child's brain is formed by age 2. So what you do in those first 2 years has a very long-lasting impact on how your child's brain develops. I have seen this so many thousands of times. I'm going to be showing you babies reading later, and everyone's always surprised, and they always think, oh, these are the genius babies. It's only these babies. But I believe virtually any baby could learn to read, just like all of the babies that I'm going to show you here. So what I want to do today is, first of all, talk just a little bit about brain development, and then I'll talk about how babies learn about language in general. I'll talk about receptive language, which is understanding the spoken language, and then I'll talk about expressive language, which is saying or signing the words. Then I'll talk about learning the written form of language, and then I'll talk about how your baby can learn second languages. As far as brain development goes, there's a period of time where the brain is developing extremely rapidly, and then it starts to slow down rather quickly. About 90% of a child's brain is formed by age 5. So those first 5 years of life, before the child even goes to school, are critically important for the child's brain development. If the parents are not active as their child's first teachers, then there will be an opportunity that is missed out. And if you think that the school system can do a better job with one teacher and 25 or 30 children than what you could do, then you have really not allowed your child to learn nearly as much as your child can learn if you're interacting with your child. So I think a statistic that always stands out in my mind is that the baby has tens of thousands of new synapses forming every single second. Even at age 2.5, the child has tens of thousands of new brain connections forming every second, and then it begins to slow down after that. So what you do with your child actually impacts the physical structure of the child's brain. How the brain is formed, how those connections are formed, changes based on what you are doing with your baby. This is a change that will last forever. It's not a short-term effect. It actually changes how the brain develops. So please spend as much time as you can interacting with your baby, and all of the time and energy that you put in early on will come back to you many thousands of times over your lifetime and your child's lifetime. I know parents are busy. I know you're tired when you get home from work. I know, your husband or spouse or whoever is tired. And I know that it's easier to just sit and do other things. But if you put that extra time and energy in early in life, then when your child is in school, in middle school and so on, you'll have a lot more time because your child will get his or her homework done faster, and you will have more time, family time, more time to do the things you want to do because you won't be helping your child for 2 or 3 hours every night. My children, on the other hand, rarely had homework that took them very long at all to do because they would usually get it done before they got home from school. So it was because of all the time and energy that we put in early in life that affected everything. I want to talk about receptive language now, and receptive language is understanding the spoken language. So if I say book, and the child knows that this is a book, then you would say the word book is in the child's receptive vocabulary. The first 50 words will take a very long time for the child to learn, but once the baby can understand around 50 words, then the child actually starts learning new words after hearing them only once or twice. The first 6 months or so, you will want to repeat many of the same phrases and many of the same words over and over and over. I can remember saying, "I am Daddy." I must have said that, I don't even know how many thousands of times because I wanted to make sure that they learned the word Daddy. So I think a lot of you can relate to that, and you'll get in the habit of saying, "I am Mommy," but at some point you actually intentionally want to use the pronouns. So how you talk to a 3-month-old baby is actually a lot different than how you'll talk to an older baby. Once the baby's 9 or 10 months of age, you need to talk in a different way to the baby. So with the younger babies, before they know 50 words, you need to repeat the same words over and over and over and specifically point out object names. This is a stool. And then you would show how you can sit on the stool and so on. So I would demonstrate, for instance, the word chair. I would show many different kinds of chairs, and I would say, this is a chair, and so on, and sit in each chair, put the baby in the chair, put little stuffed animals in the chairs, and just demonstrate what the word chair means. If you do that with every single word, then your child will learn words very easily. So what I'm asking you to do is talk to your baby as much as you can, whether you're shopping or walking or just in your house, if you're folding laundry or cooking or anything that you're doing. If you're talking to the baby about what the baby is interested in, that is the very best way for the baby to learn language. Usually parents will talk about what the parent is interested in, but you have to look at your baby and talk about what the baby is looking at, listening to, tasting, smelling, touching, or how the baby is moving. So describe all of the baby's senses. I added movement in there because movement is a very important part of the baby's life, and how they learn a lot about objects and about language is through their movement. So while they're moving, you can describe how the child is moving. So talk to the baby as much as you can using simple descriptive language and using the higher pitched voice, like this is a stool, the higher pitched voice. Babies really respond very well to that voice. So please do that. Even the dads out there should be doing that. Once the baby knows around 50 words, then the child goes through something that's often called fast mapping. where they learn new words after hearing them only once or twice. During this time, you want to get out of the habit of repeating the same words over and over because your baby already knows those words. So how you know if your baby knows those words or not is actually by asking your baby questions. There are studies showing that parents don't generally ask their baby questions until around 12 months of age. Around 12 months of age, that's when the child usually starts to walk and say his or her first words. So that's when parents actually look at the baby differently and they start to ask the baby questions. But you can actually ask a 5-month-old baby a question, and the baby will answer, but not by talking. The baby will answer by looking. So you could, I remember setting up Tweety Bird and some other stuffed animals, and then I would ask, "Where's Tweety Bird?" And then Alika or Keelan would look, and I could tell if they knew the words. So that's how you can ask the child and see if the child knows things, even very young children. And if they know 50 words, then they're probably going to learn new words very, very quickly. Talk as much as you can, and then you want to go into a little bit more detail. So instead of just calling this green, I won't even call it what color of green would you say this is? Olive, okay. Wow, you all agree on that. That's impressive. So I would give more specific words about color names and about objects in general. You want to give them more specific words, not so general, because the baby has this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity of learning words without any effort whatsoever. If you see, no one really taught me olive, to be honest with you, as a baby. So when I have difficulty with colors, as I learned 7 or 8 categories of colors, and that's about it. So I've had to make an effort to learn any other colors. When Alika and Keelan were babies, however, I went and got a lot of different colors from paper stores and so on. I taught them colors like cerulean, which is a blue. They remembered all of the colors. I forgot them shortly after I taught them to them. So you will experience this yourself, so don't not say things to your child because you don't think you can remember it yourself. It doesn't really matter if you remember. You probably won't remember it if it's a new word for you, but your baby will remember it. There are studies showing that babies can learn new words after hearing them once or twice and then remember them for 6 months. So you have to be very careful which words you say in front of your baby. The point that I'm trying to make, again, is to talk to the baby and describe all of the baby's senses. Talk as much as you can wherever you are throughout the day. That's the key point, okay? If a 3-month-old baby makes a new sound, what's probably happening is there's a random firing of neurons in the brain, and then the sound comes out. If the baby says ba and no one notices, there will be a period of time that goes by, and then the baby may say the sound again. But if you say ba, ba, you said ba, and you get all happy and excited, what you've done is you've attached a value to a sound that was randomly made. If you do that, according to the latest theories of brain development, you increase the strength of the synapse simply by attaching a value to the synapse. You're attaching the value because you're getting all happy and excited, so it sort of flags the synapse, which means that it's a little bit more important, so the baby remembers it a little bit better. Also, if you repeat it several times, then the baby gets other chances to hear what the baby just said. So this increases the probability that the baby will say ba again. So I recommend reinforcing language-related sounds, not all the sounds that your baby makes, but just the language-related sounds. Now, we naturally do this with anything that sounds similar to mama or dada. And then you'll hear a lot of babies, even at 12 months of age, who will just say mama, mama, or dad, 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 depending on who was doing more reinforcing. If you do this with all the different sounds, it will be much easier for your baby to make sounds. One reason why there's a delay, there's generally about a 6-month delay from understanding words to saying words. The main reason is the child has a lack of tongue and mouth control. So even though your child may be able to understand hundreds and hundreds of words, your child may only be able to say 2 or 3 words. So you can actually do some fun tongue activities with your baby or toddler and help them get better tongue and mouth control. The First one I would do is I would get a mirror and put it somewhere in your house where you're with the baby a lot. If you have a playroom or the child's room, put a mirror in there where it's very convenient for you. If it's not convenient, you're probably not going to do this very much, but if it's very convenient, you'll probably do it very frequently. Have a mirror where the baby can look into the mirror, and you look into the mirror, and you stick your tongue in and out. And I found if you just do it by the mirror, generally they just do this by the mirror and they're not doing it everywhere else. So you stick your tongue in and out. After you get them to do that, then you can actually move your tongue back and forth in circles and other kinds of shapes so they get better tongue control. I'm not going to demonstrate any of these right now, but do this with your baby or toddler, and you'll see that the child will get better tongue and mouth control. Occasionally, you want to throw in what are called functional tongue activities. For instance, put your tongue between your teeth. Go ahead and do that now, and you can make the TH sound. Okay? If you throw in some of those, then that will help the child to make certain sounds. That's a good idea, but a better idea is actually if you're just very carefully watching your child, when you have that mirror set up, you'll notice that your child will come across many different facial expressions. Your child might do something like this, where they put their upper teeth on their lower lip. If they do that, what sound can you make there? So then I would say, fish, bone, bun, in words that start with an F sound. That is actually easier. If you're watching very carefully your baby's mouth, and your baby just comes across that, it's easier to get your child to make that sound than it is to try to get them to put their upper teeth on their lower lip and then make the sound. So what I'm really asking you to do is pay just a little bit more attention to the sounds that your baby makes and to the facial expressions and tongue configurations that your baby makes. If you do that, then it'll be easier for you to help your child make new sounds. A lot of the parents who come to my talks tend to be very dedicated, loving parents, and I have found that one thing that they do that they intend to be very good, but it's not necessarily in the baby's interest, is they will get the baby something and the baby doesn't have to talk. So the baby might grunt and point to the refrigerator, and because you know exactly what your child wants, you'll go and get what your child wants. And it's better if you actually ask the baby. Initially, you would ask a question like, did you want milk or juice or whatever it was? And then later, you would ask more open-ended questions where the child would have to say what he or she wants. Initially, you want to make it really easy and just give them two options. And it could be a yes or no question also. But you want to ask your child questions instead of getting what you already know they want. If they don't need to talk to get what they want, then their motivation level for talking goes down. In addition to learning all of these words that the baby's learning when you're talking to the child and the words that they're saying, they're also learning the patterns of the language. So they're not simply learning all of the individual words that you're saying to them, they're actually learning when to add an ED onto words to make them past tense, or when to add an S onto words to make them plural. They're learning the rules of grammar without you sitting down and explaining them. If you had to sit down and explain the rules of grammar to a baby, obviously the baby is not going to learn. That's very complicated, but the babies learn very naturally just from listening to us talk. So what I'm going to show you in just a minute will be many babies who have not just learned the written language, the individual words, but they've also figured out the patterns of the written language. So they're not simply reading a dozen words, but they've already started, or some of the babies have already completely figured out that a B makes the bus sound, just like they figure out when to add an S onto words to make them plural. Now we know that they've learned the patterns because sometimes you'll hear a child say something like, I goed over there, or I swimmed yesterday, or something like that, where they've applied the ED and they've added it to a word that doesn't follow the pattern, even if you've never said that, even if they've never heard that. They start off by saying that. If you hear English early in life, you learn when to add an ing onto words and you don't have to think about it at all. But could any of you explain when do you add an ing onto words? Does anyone want to try to explain that? That's not easy. I've asked groups of teachers, sometimes hundreds of teachers together, and this is a difficult question. But if you learn English early in life, you learn very naturally without having to think about when to add an ing. If you learn English later in life, you may have to think about it every time that you're talking. These are the kinds of patterns that can only be learned during this natural window of opportunity for learning language, and it's learned very naturally and very easily without any effort on the child's part. The same can happen with the written form of language, where if you learn all these individual words, you will figure out that the M makes the M sound. And no one needs to tell you that. You just learned because you could read many words that had an M in them. So what I want to do now is show you a bunch of babies who have learned to read from watching the Your Baby Can Read videos. The first baby is named Savannah. She's 15 months old. At 15 months of age, she could read every word in the video, about 200 words, and she also acted out the words. So the first word she's going to read is happy, and then she claps for happy. For spider, she's acting out the itsy bitsy spider. So this is showing that she understands the meaning of all the words.
Happy. Spider.
Spider.
Easy.
Easy. Good job.
Cup. Move.
Moo.
Reading.
Reading.
Couch. Couch. Pillow. Paper.
Polar bear. Very good.
Correct.
Ready? Are you ready?
This is my own daughter, Alika, at 9 months of age.
Here we go.
This is after about 6 months of looking at words.
Head. Okay. Hand. Very good. Pointing. Foot.
Well, she only had about 2 teeth, so this one is a little bit more challenging. The average 9-month-old can only identify one body part if you say it out loud. I have a videotape of Alika doing 30 consecutive words that she's reading. So many of the babies who watch our videos know their body parts because we specifically teach them body parts in the videos.
Hair. Good. Eating. Good. Finger. Good.
Now, notice how she changes her voice from character to character here.
It's on the big bad wolf. Pigs ran into the house. The wolf knocked on the door. Little pigs, let me come in, come in. No, we will not let you come in. Not by the hair of our Jimmy Chin. Chins for the pigs.
What is this?
Mom.
Mouth. Yeah. Oh, what is this one? Ears, right. What is this?
This baby is learning 2 languages, and yet she reads very, very well in English.
Eyes. Nose.
Quack.
Is it head?
The dad didn't know what the word was, okay?
Doc. Jacob, what's this say? Hair. Jacob, what's this say? Animals. Good.
Put in the pile. Jacob, what's this say?
The float in the ocean.
Listen to what the dad says in just a few seconds about how well he could read at 18 months.
Jacob.
That's right in the sky.
Here we go.
Our son Jacob started using the Your Baby Can Read series at 6 months old. We followed Dr. Titzer's protocol, and by 12 months he was reading many, many words.
At 18 months, his vocabulary just exploded. He was reading books, signs, menus, newspapers, anything he could get his hands on.
Notice he's spelling his name Jacob.
He tested on a 2nd and 3rd grade reading level. He was given the sight word list that a 2nd and 3rd grade student should know, and he knew all the words, hundreds of words.
And it's not like it's a chore or a task for him to read. He he really enjoys reading. Just to see the sense of accomplishment in his eyes when he figures out a word, he just gets really excited, and it's truly amazing to see, and it's just one of his favorite activities.
Our daughter Claire is 3 months old, and she has already started watching the Baby You Can Read series. She watches the videos from front to back. She giggles, she smiles, she interacts with the video, and we really believe that at this young age, she is starting to learn to read also.
Hi. Where's your nose? Right
This baby's
there.
15 months old. She can also read all 200 words in the videos out loud at 15 months of age.
Good, Sarah.
Good job. Elephant. That's right. Mouth.
Mouth's good, Sarah.
Gorilla. That's right. Tiger.
My wife and I started Sarah on the Your Baby Can Read videos at 4 months old. She's now at 15 months old, and she knows all the words in the videos, as well as a few others. She knows not only how to read them, but she can say them aloud as well. My wife and I listed the number of words that she can read and say aloud, and it's about 200 words at this point.
Good. Good girl.
Good. Touch. Touch.
Good girl.
Toe.
Good
That's
girl.
probably enough to convince you. I just got this one. I really want to show, I don't know which side, but I'm getting new videos all the time on babies. And this baby, I actually got to meet this baby. At 13 months of age, I gave her a Your Baby Can Read book. And the very first time she saw it, she read the entire book at 13 months of age, which I know is hard to believe, but you'll believe it more after you watch the video.
All right, we're on. We're on.
Here we go. Ready? Okay.
Say cheese.
Okay. Let's do our work. What does this say? Eat. Good. Good.
Dad, slow down. Dad needs to see the word.
What does it say? Yeah, you stand there. You gotta show her though.
Point.
Point. Good girl.
Yeah. All right.
Daddy.
Daddy. Good girl.
All right.
Can you see Chloe in the camera? Chloe.
All right.
Good. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know that was I'll do that again so people know she don't. Clap. Good
Clap.
girl.
Ah.
Keys. Good girl. What's this one? Elbow.
Elbow.
Good girl. Toe.
Toes.
Teeth.
Teeth.
Good girl. Woo. Now do this one again. Chloe. Good girl. Diaper.
Diaper.
This goes on and on. So anyway, hopefully this is enough, but I have had the very good fortune of meeting people all over the world where they've taught their babies to read. For instance, in Hong Kong, I was the judge. I know this is hard to believe. They have a baby reading contest. In Hong Kong, they are learning 3 languages. They're learning Mandarin, Cantonese, and English. And there were so many babies who could read very well in English. And I saw the babies. There was no stress. There was no tension. There was nothing. They were enjoying it. They love reading. It's just like the studies that I mentioned earlier, where the earlier the child is taught to read, the more likely the child actually wants to read. You saw Jacob there and how excited he got every single time he read a word. I've seen the same thing around the world with babies. They love books. They love reading. It's really fun to read, and I highly recommend, instead of watching TV at night, that you read. This is something that a lot of us had the good fortune when there were more parents staying home with their children. They weren't quite as exhausted at the end of the night, where more people did this. So if you have the energy and you can get into a pattern where you're reading with your children every night, I think this is something that has a lot of very positive effects for your child. I'll talk about many other activities that you can do to help teach reading in just a minute. One of the most important ones is actually using the Your Baby Can Read videos. So I want to show you the actual video that teaches the babies how to read. Okay, notice how interactive the video is going to be. It's not going to be where the baby's just sitting there watching, but the baby's going to be interacting throughout the video. Here's the first word.
Hi. Hi, my name is Alika. We're going to read some words. Make sure you look at the words. Can you say
Clap.
clap? The baby is clapping. Can you clap?
Can you say nose?
Nose.
Delaney is touching her nose. Now you touch your nose.
So you see how interactive it is. The child is supposed to say the word. The child sees the word, hears the word,
Arrows are pointing to
sees
the
and hears
baby's
what the
arms.
word means, and then often there's some physical action to do related to the word, or they have a question related to the word. They're also learning to look at
Arms
words from
up.
left to right. This is very
Put your
important
arms
because
up.
children see words,
Arms up.
but they don't know how to look at the words. Basically, you can use this video like you would other videos where you're busy around the house and you just need a few minutes to do something else, and you can put the video on. Ideally, with the very young babies, you'll do it with the baby, a 3-month-old or 4 or 5-month-old baby. I recommend doing it with the baby about half the time. So when the word nose would come on, you would touch the little baby's nose, you would touch your nose, you would make it as concrete as possible for the baby. You can't do this for a couple of weeks. Well, it didn't work. No one would learn in a couple of weeks. It needs to be just like talking to the baby. You talk to your baby throughout the day over a long period of time, even though for about 5 months you'll see no sign that your baby has learned a single word. But you continue doing it because you know that your baby will eventually learn to understand language. This is exactly the same. I am positive that your baby will learn to read as long as you are consistent. We have children who have had all sorts of learning disabilities who have learned to read from watching these videos. So it's not like it's only these bright babies that are going to learn. Any baby can learn if you are consistent and if you begin early enough. That's very important because the more a person reads, the more you learn and the better you get at reading. So starting early in life will give you many advantages. Okay. In addition to watching the videos, you want to point out words. You can do that with word cards, just by saying the word and pointing from left to right and then acting it out. You want to make it as fun as possible. These are really fun word cards. You point to the word and say nose, and then you pull it and talk about the child's nose. You talk about your nose. You touch the baby's nose. You make it as fun and interactive as possible. And you just make words and learning words a fun playtime activity. So basically the children who are doing this play with words. They love words. They like to, like if you have the word car and they have a little toy car, they like to match the car with the word car. You play fun matching games with words. I recommend going to the library and checking out many books. But there's one thing a lot of parents tell me, well, they read to their children. They read to their children, therefore they don't need to do this because they're already reading to their children. But that is not true. There are studies showing that the average 4 or 5-year-old only focuses on words 5 seconds per book. When a parent is reading to the child, 5 seconds per book, the child is focused on words. What do you think the child is looking at the rest of the time? The pictures. If the child were looking at this, the child would be looking at all these pictures in most cases. However, the babies who watch our videos do develop an interest in words, and they would be more inclined to ask, what does this word say, or what does that word say? Or they might see an exit sign or the name on a store. They'll start to pay more attention to words, and they'll start to learn words that they would not have learned had they not watched the video, because they're actually going to be paying more attention to the words. And they'll know to look at words from left to right, whereas how would a child possibly know that otherwise? Because in some languages, you look at words from right to left. Okay, so you want to look at words in books, you want to look at words on word cards, you want to look at words on the TV, and with the blank card here, you want to write out any new word that the child is interested in. So if the child is playing with a house, then you would write down the word house, and you would say, this is a house, and then you just let the child see the word at the same time the child hears the word. If you do this on a consistent basis, then your child will learn many, many new words, and then eventually your child will figure out that the B makes the bus sound, just like they figure out all the other patterns in language. In the video, we do have some phonics sections where we're specifically trying to teach the child phonics. For instance, we have the word cat in here, we have hat, we have that, mat, sat, and so on. And just from having the words next to each other in some of the sections, the child will figure out the at family, okay? So your child will learn phonics by doing this. You can do extra phonics. If you have an older child, you will need to do extra phonics activities, but with the babies and toddlers, you don't need to do the extra phonics activities, and the children will figure it out just from the phonics activities we already have in the video. When you go to the library, I actually recommend checking out hundreds of books from the library. If you have a lot of new books around the house, you will find that you are more interested in reading the books because you've already read every single baby book that you have many, many times, and you'll find that your interest goes up, your child's interest will go up. You will find many topics that the child is interested in from doing this. When you're reading to your child, that is not going to teach your child to read. It is not. And most of the books have too many words and they're too small, and most of the books have a picture and then the word, okay? In this book, you'll notice we have a big word, and if you point to this and say nose, this is my nose, then you touch the child's nose, and then you lift it up, or if the child's older, then you ask the child to touch his or her nose. Then you can ask the child to touch the baby's nose, and then you can point if the child's not able to, and just talk about the nose, and then you would go back and say nose. This is the word nose. This is my nose. This is, and then say your child's name, that child's nose, and so on. So these kinds of books are hard to find where there are only one word on the page. I think we have the only books that I've ever seen like this where there's a word and then the picture. Most of the other books will have a picture first and then the word. So what happens is the child immediately thinks of what it is because they see the picture, and then they don't have to think about the word. So these books can be used to teach reading. Most books are not used to teach reading. You can find a few books where there are only a few words per page. When you're reading those books with your child, with a young baby, you would point to each word as you say it. With an older child, you would teach the child to point to the words while you are reading to the child. And then eventually, the child will read some of the words. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, thank you. So I'll take any questions that anyone has. Thank you very much, and ask any question whatsoever that you have.
Hi there, my name's Christy. I had a question for you. Is 5 years too old to start the child on the program?
Okay, very good question. 5 is not too old, but 5 is near the end of the window. The window actually begins to close at age 4 for learning language very naturally and very easily. It's still easier at age 5 than it will be at age 6. So I always tell parents if they have a 5-year-old to try to put as much time and energy into helping them learn to read, because there are studies showing that if a child cannot read at grade level by the end of 1st grade, fewer than 1 in 8 ever catch up to read at grade level again. So I think it should be a focus, and I highly recommend turning off the TV as much as possible. I have not really talked about it. Sometimes I will talk for 15 minutes straight about how important it is to not watch TV. Parents should not be putting one video on after another, and I don't think the focus of your family life should revolve around the children watching TV while you're doing something else. So 5 is not too late, and I would just, in addition to watching the videos still work at age 5. We have had children at age 6 and even 7 and 8 who have used the videos and learned to read, but at age 5 you will have to do a little bit more of a phonics approach, and you will need to do other activities. It's a little bit more work and effort at age 5 than it is at age 2, for instance. So if you do what I said about going to the library, you'll find some of those books will only have a few words per page. Use those books to teach reading. Most of the other books you'll be reading just for the love or the joy of reading, but you will also need to use other methods to teach your 5-year-old to read.
I started using Your Baby Can Read program when my daughter was just over a year, and we used it really consistently for about 9 months. And she wasn't watching any other television, and I really noticed her picking up concepts and being able to point out everything. And then when I started working full-time and she was spending time in other places, she started watching other television shows, and we kind of stopped using it a bit. And now, you know, I'm finding I really want to start encouraging it again.
Right. How old is she now?
Now she's just over 2. So 26 months.
Okay.
And I'm wondering, should I start at the beginning again? Or, you know?
Very good question. If you've used the program, left for a while, and then are coming back, you'll go at a much faster pace the second time around. So instead of watching the starter DVD for a full month, you'll watch for maybe a couple of days, and then move on to the next one, and then review the starter DVD. And for most of the parents, if you go on to the DVD and go on to the parent instructions, there's a schedule there for you to look at. So typically the child would watch the starter DVD for 1 month, then move to volume 1 for 2 months. And while watching volume 1, the child would go back and review the starter DVD. In your case, instead of watching for a month, it will probably be only a few days and then move on. But you have to show all 5 of the DVDs, not just one of them, because the child has already seen them and has probably already learned many of the words. You don't want to show the same one too many times. Probably more important for you would be to go back to how you were forming your television viewing and your family life, which I would say, I don't care how much the child wants to watch certain shows. At age 2, the child doesn't know that watching one mindless program after another is going to have negative consequences on the child. You do know it, but your child doesn't know it. So if you don't take control over your TV at age 2, it's so much more difficult to wait until they're 3 or 4 or 5. I highly recommend that you decide what your child is going to watch, and you don't do it because you're busy and you know the child will watch this program, so you'll put that one on because you're busy. That's not how you decide what is in your child's best interest. You decide, is the program educational? Is it interactive? Is there some benefit to the child by watching the program? And if you go back to that, then everything will work much, much, much better than if the child is watching too many TV shows. Okay.
By using this program from such a young age, can it at all prevent or help prevent child learning disabilities like dyslexia or ADHD or anything like that?
Very good question. Actually, according to a national panel of reading specialists and early childhood educators, most of our nation's reading problems could be completely prevented, including dyslexia. Dyslexia is the most common learning disability that we have in the United States. And it could be completely prevented, according to a national panel of reading specialists, if we did 2 things. 1 is to teach reading earlier, and 2 is to not focus on either a phonics or a whole language approach, but do a combination of the 2. So if you do that, it will help. I've gone to scientific conferences where I've shown the video, and a lot of people have seen the arrow, and they notice that all the babies will look at the arrow from left to right. The reason babies look at the arrow is because infants' vision is attracted to motion. That's why I put it in there to begin with, so that they would learn to look at words from left to right. But the people who study dyslexia have told me that they come up with all these sophisticated, fancy programs, vision programs, where they're moving objects all around to try to teach them to look at words from left to right. And when they see this, they think, oh, that's a good idea. Because you don't need to look from left to right all the time. You just need to look when you're reading or when you're crossing the road in certain places and so on. You need to look from left to right sometimes and right to left other times. Okay?
My son started it too.
Okay.
And he would just sit and watch the video. My daughter at 2 runs around and looks at the video when it's the music or hands up or but usually she's just running around and every once in a while focuses on the video. Is she getting the same thing out of it? as he did.
That's a very good question. Now, your son is how old now?
5.
He's 5, and he started at age
2.
2, and when did he start reading?
6 weeks later.
6 weeks later. Okay, that is really fast. Usually, instead of learning to read in 6 weeks, it usually takes about 6 months. Your daughter is 2?
Yep, she just turned
Okay.
2.
There are many children, I call them active children, and if you have an active child who just doesn't stay seated very much, then there are many different strategies you can use to help the child focus longer, because the child at age 2 who is running around is not getting the same out of it as someone who's sitting there and really focused. So you want the child to focus more. One thing you can do is dim the lights. If you dim the lights, then the TV will be brighter. It's just like if we go to the theater and all the lights are out, it's easy to just focus on what's happening right in front of us. So I think that really works very well. Also, remove all the distractions from the environment before you begin. Pick up all the toys, everything else before you begin, wherever you're going to be showing the video. Don't do it right as you're beginning, because as you pick up something, then they get interested in whatever it is you're removing. So do it before you begin. Also, you can try when she's eating finger food, sitting at a high chair, and you can get in the habit of feeding her while she's watching the video at lunch. I'm not trying to take away from any family time sitting together as a family and eating. I'm really not. But sometimes we are busy and we're not always eating together as a family. So during those times, you can show the video while she's eating. If you do not watch other TV, and if she's not watching any of the mindless TV shows that are often called educational programs, then it definitely works much better. And since your son is reading so well, I really want your daughter to read at the same level. So sometimes with the second child, parents are occupied more with the first child, and we don't always put the same time and energy in. I'm just telling you, try your very best for your second child to put as much time and energy as you can in early on, and that is something you will never regret. And if you don't do it, you may have regrets later. So try also just doing it 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there, before or after a nap. Maybe you can go and do physical activities and then come back after you've gotten really tired. Then you can sit there and watch the video with her. You can sit with her and clap and do all the actions. All these different ways will make it more likely that she'll want to watch.
What's the first thing she asks for when we walk in the door?
Oh, very good. So she likes to watch it. It's just her concentration is not as long.
She wants to watch it and run around.
Okay. Well, actually, we have had a lot
It's not
of...
necessarily like she's picking up with toys or anything.
Right.
She just...
Oh, so she's just physically moving. As long as
Yeah.
she's looking when the words come up, then I would just let her run around. If she is running around, but when the words come up, you notice that she stops to look at the words, then I would just continue the way you are doing it. We've had many, many, many children learn to read who did the exact same thing. They weren't sitting and focused, but sitting and being focused, sometimes that works better, but some children are just not inclined to sit as long. Okay. Other questions? Okay.
At what age do you introduce a second language?
Okay. Well, in studies about learning a second language, the earlier the child is taught a second language, the more efficient the brain develops for learning the second language. So if you have a child who learns from birth through age 4, they have one large area of the brain that's active, whether the child is speaking or thinking in the first language or the second language. If you learn at age 5 all the way up until age 10, then you still have that first area, first language. So let's say this is English, and if the second language is Spanish, then you would have an adjacent area that would be active if the child would be thinking or speaking in Spanish. This area is smaller, and as the child gets older, it gets smaller and smaller and a little bit farther away from the area for the first language. How we're currently doing it is we're generally waiting until the child is in high school in most communities. In some areas it's middle school. Sometimes they say they have second language programs in elementary school, but often they're just counting or just doing very basic things. So the earlier you do it, the better, and the easier it will be for your child to learn the language. I tell parents that they should consider their family backgrounds and decide which language. Obviously, if one of the spouses knows a language, then it's easier to teach that language. But think about which language you want. You also might want to try to guess at which languages would be better for your child to learn 15 or 20 years from now. So just think about which languages might benefit your child the most. For every child, they would benefit learning a second language, I believe, because for one thing, at the university, the child has to have a second language. And I don't know how many of you struggled to learn a second language, but I did. And that was something that I had to take it in college. And I had to study, and I had to work. That would just be one more thing that would be easy for your child. Just to make sure I'm clear, the answer is the earlier the better. And when you're teaching a second language, you want to speak in complete thoughts in English and complete thoughts in the other language. You don't want to mix within a sentence the two languages.
Right.
That's about the worst thing that you can do for teaching a second language. There are some TV shows that are called educational where that's exactly what they do in the TV show. They'll speak in English, and then the last word of the sentence, they'll say it in Spanish. And the children who watch that show will speak in the same way. So I highly recommend that you don't do that. As long as you don't do that, and as long as you talk a lot in both languages, then the child will learn very naturally and very easily. If you don't speak a second language yourself, but you want to teach your child a second language, then it's a lot more difficult. Then you want to use DVDs, you want to use books in the other languages, you want to use audio tapes, you want to find a group of people where you can meet maybe once every 2 weeks where someone is teaching the language. So you can find friends in most places around the country where someone speaks a second language. And if you can't, then go to the library and go to other community resources and ask about where you can find class. And you can take classes with your baby. Your baby will learn very quickly the second language, and you will, at first it will seem like you are learning the language faster because the child won't be saying it, but a year later you'll see that the child has actually learned a lot more than what you will learn.
Okay. My question relates to, you've mentioned a few concepts in your videos that children seem to kind of pick up on their own and realize on their own. And I'm wondering how that relates to individual letters.
Okay,
so
good question.
When a child, associates this group of letters with this meaning, are they memorizing, the letters put together? Or at what point can they take that letter and put it with this word?
Okay.
Is that part of the program or something that comes along much later?
With individual letters, initially the babies are memorizing the shape of the word. It's a blob to them. If I hold up this word babies, initially it's just some blob, some shape. In the DVDs, I actually use many different fonts and I use many different colors. So we have different background colors and different text colors, many different fonts. They're being taught that it's the shape of the word that's important. It's not the color, it's not all the individual differences there, it's a general shape. Over time, they figure out without being told that this part of the shape, even if they don't know it's called a B, makes the B sound, okay? So I'll use my own children as examples, but I've heard the same stories from many other parents all over the place. If they follow my advice, which is you do not need to teach them the names of these individual letters, as if you talk with people who teach reading, you'll see that that doesn't really help them learn to read any words, okay? What a lot of people are doing now is actually teaching the sounds of the letters. The sounds would make a lot more sense than the names of the letters. But I know that in kindergarten, the teacher's going to expect they know the names of the letters, and they're going to be judged by whether or not they know the names of these letters. So you have to teach them the names of the letters. Once they can read many words, then when you try to teach them the names of the letters, it will be just like the objects I was talking about earlier. So if you think of the microphone that you're holding there, if a child has never seen a microphone and the child knows at least 50 words, you point to the microphone one time and say microphone, and the child will learn it. Well, the same is true with these letters. The child sees a B, and the child will figure out that that B that this shape, if you just show the bee, the child will know that's a bee, because the child has seen this bee so many thousands of times in so many words that usually the children are actually interested that they have individual names. I remember my daughter Alika just being fascinated that they had names. She learned the names of the alphabet in about 5 minutes. Many, many children have done exactly the same thing. They can learn in a few minutes because they have seen them so many thousands of times that it becomes a more concrete object. Instead of, for the children who don't know how to read, this is a very abstract shape. They have no idea what it is, how it's used, or anything else, and we're trying to teach them something that's extremely abstract. This is not abstract because when they see the word baby, then they see a baby. It's very concrete for them. Did I explain the whole thing, or do you have more?
Makes a lot more sense.
All right.
So it's probably a pretty smooth transition from these words that they learn on your programs to being able to pick up a book and be able to, you know, assign these letters to different words and be able
Positively. So what would happen then is about the first 100 words, they're mostly just learning individual words. But we have many babies where if we hold up the word, I was giving a talk in St. Louis, for instance, and this baby must have read 50 words in a row. Little baby, she read every single word, but the one that everyone remembered was when I accidentally held the word upside down. I was not doing this on purpose, I just accidentally held it upside down. And she flipped the card, she said, oops, and flipped the card back over. And that surprised people the most because, and this happened with both of my children, where if I would hold it upside down, it wouldn't be on purpose. I just am this way where I would make a lot of mistakes. They would turn their heads upside down or they would flip it over for me. And by 12 months of age, they would do this because they already recognized enough words. So that means they had not just learned the individual words, but they had a general idea in their heads about what words look like. And if you show something upside down and it has at least 4 letters or so, then it probably doesn't look like a word. Okay? Thank you.
Can you use the same flashcard concept with numbers? Will they?
Oh.
Will they remember like 1 + 2 if you show it on a card?
Okay.
And will they be able to read and learn how to count and add and subtract?
Okay, with numbers, I don't recommend focusing on the numeral. So here's the numeral 3.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Most parents are focused on the numerals and not the concept of number. The concept of number is more important. So having 3 objects, for instance, here are three objects. This would be 3, okay? And you would do that with many different things. I would do it while counting. Why don't I just talk about how you can do activities related to numbers? And hopefully that will answer your question. I would not do it with cards necessarily. I would try to do it with concrete objects as much as possible. So you can count when you're walking with your child. How old is your child?
She's 18 months.
18 months. So she's already climbing stairs, for instance. So every time you climb stairs, you could count each step as you go. Mm-hmm. It will slow you down. Sometimes you have to pick her up and jog if you're in a hurry. But you can do the counting. Every time you do it, you should count. You should count when you are playing with toys. You'll want to specifically point out, could you please hand me 2 blue Legos or 2 of these or 2 of those or whatever? You want to talk and say numbers while the child is playing with certain numbers of objects. What I'm really saying is bring it into the child's everyday activities. Whenever the child is playing, that is the perfect opportunity to talk about numbers or many other concepts. When the child is eating, I remember we ate lots of round food, and I would cut their food into fractions. And I can remember with Keelan, I would cut her food into fractions, and initially I would do things like 2 halves and 4 fourths and so on. One day Keelan said, Daddy, I would like 1 half, 1 fourth, and she was looking at it, 1/8, and 2/16, and that adds up to 1. And she was 2 years old. And because she had been doing this for a long time, she's very good with fractions now. She's 13. So anyway, I would say if you just bring numbers into the child's everyday life, then your child is going to learn numbers very well. All right.
I have another question.
Okay. Yes.
It has to do with when do you introduce writing, actual writing?
Oh, okay, good. Very good question. You saw Jacob. In a way, he was writing. He was printing his name or spelling his name. I would introduce writing with letters like that for babies who learn to read because they don't have the physical skill to actually print the letters. So you want to have many letters around the house where they can form the words on their own once they know how to read. Okay? So then you want to find larger writing utensils and teach them how to hold them correctly, which is not that easy to do because they can get into very bad habits. So I wouldn't introduce it too early where they actually physically cannot do it. They can color, they can do all sorts of things, but I wouldn't focus too much on the writing. I would focus more on coloring, making symbols. I wouldn't try to teach that early on where they might get into bad habits of how to hold the writing utensil and also not form the letters correctly and then have to relearn it all later. But to answer the age part, which I did not do, that would vary with every single child based on their physical skills. But we have many children at age 4 who can print very neatly and write long stories.
I wonder if socially your young child succeeds in reading so well and they become so hungry for knowledge through reading. They go to school and everyone around them doesn't. How does it make that child feel? And socially, do they ever feel at a disadvantage? I mean, because they're a minority rather than... And how does the teacher deal with those kind of issues?
Well, initially, I think the benefit is very positive because if you watched all the babies reading, they are verbal, for the most part, earlier than other children. Imagine that you're verbal early on. You get many more opportunities to interact with not only adults but other children. So early on, I think there's a positive advantage of being able to communicate earlier because you get many more social experiences. As far as being in school, I will agree with you that in school, many schools, depending on where your child is going, there are a smaller number of highly gifted children at the school. But if your child goes to a larger school at some point, for instance, when Alika entered high school, she had many AP classes, the advanced placement classes. That's when she really found, I believe, a lot of her friends because she found many other people who were similar to her academically and their interest and so on. And I think it is easier, not that you can't make friends with everyone, but it is easier when you have other people who have a lot of your same interest or skills.
Hi, my name is Karen. Hi, Dr. Bob.
Hi, Karen.
It's really a pleasure to be here today, and I think that this program is completely fascinating. My question is, I know that you like to start children out at 3 months old. You say that at 3 months old you can introduce the program to them. And I know there's a series of the DVDs that they watch. At what point do you know to move on to the next DVD when the child's 3 months old and not speaking yet?
All right, so a child at age 3 months, you will not get any kind of feedback from the child about if the child can understand any of the words. You need to move on after 1 month regardless. There are about 22 focused or keywords in the starter DVD. I put those same words in volume 1. So in volume 1, the child will still get to see those words. So the child does not need to master the words in the first DVD before moving on. If you did that, that would actually have a very negative effect because then you would stay on the first DVD for 6 months. And in order to really learn to read and to start to figure out many other patterns of the written language, you need to see many words. For instance, we have some really long words in the video and some really short words in the video. If you only watch the first 22 words, then it's harder for you to figure that out than if you see hundreds of words. And how you know is there's a word games part at the end of the DVD, and we'll say something like, can you find the word clap? Which word says wave? And if you see that they get every single word right, then you'll know that you could move on to the next video, even if it hasn't been a full month. But otherwise, I would just stick with the recommended schedule, okay? And as far as starting, since you mentioned 3 months of age, and that's what it says on the package, but when I'm actually talking with people, I tell them it's actually better to start as soon as the baby has visual tracking. So as soon as the baby can follow moving objects with his or her eyes, that's the best time to begin. Now I would like for my daughter Alika to come up, and I would like for you to meet her, and please feel free to ask Alika some questions also. Alika, please come on up. Does anyone have a question for Alika?
Hi there. I'd like to ask you, do you remember learning to read? When you look at those videos, do you remember?
I don't remember actually learning to read, but I remember reading when I was really little. Probably the earliest I remember actually reading is when I was writing a book for my sister. I think my sister was really, really little, and I was writing a book for her birthday, like her first birthday. It was called The Very Friendly Snow Person. And then I just remember writing the story for her and then reading it to her out loud. I must have been like
almost. Well, no, you must have been 3.
Yeah, I was 3.
4.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
so
amazing.
I think that's the earliest I actually remember. But I remember also, like when I was a kid, a toddler, I would see other babies, and they would be looking at books, and I'd be like, oh, look, the baby's reading a book, because I would just assume that they were reading like me. So.
Yeah. That's great. Well, thank you.
This kind of goes back to what Marianne asked earlier, but I thought it'd be interesting to get your perspective on how this might have affected you socially and interacting with, other children your age.
Yeah.
Kind of having this, special talent.
Well, actually, a lot of people, once I meet them, people don't know how old I am because I'm ahead in school. And so not until I tell them do they know that I'm younger.
Did you like being ahead in school? I mean,
yes, I really did.
So.
Everyone, all my classmates would come up to me and they'd be like, oh, you're so lucky. I wish I could have skipped grades. So a lot of my classmates right now, they think I'm like 18 or 19, but I'm only 16.
Wow.
So
you just graduated from high school, right?
Yeah.
Congratulations.
She's also a sophomore in college, believe it or not.
Wow. I'm transferring next year. So.
Yeah. Did you ever feel like you were under pressure to learn, or was it always very fun for you?
No, it was fun. I didn't really feel like I was, well, I knew I was learning, but it didn't feel like work. Like I know when they teach you in schools, it just feels like work because you have to do it. But then when I was learning, I didn't actually have to, I just wanted to. So.
How did it feel to be able to play longer, have more fun while everyone else had to go and study?
Gosh, I don't know. You mean back when I was in kindergarten?
Well, even like in high school, when you had so much more free time because you either knew it or learned it so quickly.
Oh, yeah. Like a lot of times we'd have to read chapters. Like for my AP class, sometimes we'd have to read like 4 chapters in a night or in a couple days. And then I would just read it really quickly and I would remember it. And then everyone else would like read it out loud to themselves or just like read it really slowly to try and remember it. And so I had time to do other homework and like I had free time just to hang out. So that was nice.
That's great. That's great.
If you had to say one really great thing, I'm sure there's a million, but what's the best thing about learning how to read at an early age?
The thing that immediately comes to mind is that I like to read, because I know a lot of people who don't like to read at all. And then I just can't imagine not liking to read because like that's what I do for fun. And so I remember, especially back when I was in middle school, that's the time when a lot of my friends' parents would be pushing them to read, like saying, here, read this classic. And then I'd be like, oh, I love that book. And so, yeah, I just really enjoy it.
I want to ask Alika a question. How many times have I asked you to read a book?
Never.
Never. It's never.
My mom's asked me to stop reading a book and clean my room. So.
I have asked her to read directions, though. When we get games or anything that involves that kind of reading, I just don't like to read directions.
We'll be playing like a new game, like I don't know if you guys have heard of the cranium games, but those have really, really long directions and they're really complicated. And so we'd have game nights, and then everyone would be like, Alika, read the directions and then tell us how to play it.
I'm wondering what your favorite subject is. Being able to read so early, is reading your favorite subject? Or?
I'm really interested in philosophy. That's my major. So I think philosophy.
And there's still a lot of reading in that.
Yeah. But but in high school, I really liked French. I was really good at French.
This is kind of for both of you because you seem like a testament that doing these programs and learning to read at an early age isn't going to stifle you from other areas of learning. And I believe I read an article, it was an opinion article about these programs where somebody was talking about how, you know, when kids are that young, you don't need to teach them to read, you need to teach them to say please and thank you. And how do you respond to that? I mean, I think
I love listening to Alika's answers, so I would rather listen to Alika's answers, as I think I'm more impressed with her answers than I am mine. So how would you answer that, Alika?
Well, actually, whenever people come up and tell me it doesn't work, I get sort of like offended almost, because that's how I learned to read, and then they're telling me it doesn't work, and I was like, well, yeah, it does, because that's the only way that I ever learned to read. Like, and since I can obviously read right now, like, for them to say it doesn't work is sort of ridiculous. At least those are my feelings on it.
The focus on that kind of took you away from being able to focus on all the different areas of learning, or did it encourage it or make all the other areas easier? Does that make sense?
Well, actually, yeah, that makes sense. But actually, I think it helped with the other areas of learning just because since I was able to read quicker, I had more time to devote to learning in other areas.
That makes sense.
So.
Yeah, she hasn't really mentioned how quickly she reads, but she reads Harry Potter books in about 2 hours.
I read all of them in a day once.
Yeah, I mean, which is, it takes me, please do not tell me the ending of the last Harry Potter book. I only have 75 pages left, but you know that book came out many months ago, and I'm still reading it. So if I have an extra 20 minutes or 30 minutes, I would never even consider picking up a novel because I have 20 minutes. What's the point? Whereas Alika, if she has 20 minutes, you know, she can read a book in 20 minutes. So she is more likely to read in a short period of time, whereas I think a lot of us think, well, you know, I only have 20 minutes, so I'm not going to read.
Yeah. I always read books straight through. I don't have any bookmarks lying around my room because I always just pick it up and then I finish it and then set it down and then move on to the next book.
So I'm talking quickly.
Speed, that just
I believe that has completely and totally changed not only Alika's life and Keelan's life, but children all over the world who have done this, because that's probably been one of the biggest advantages that Alika has.
I didn't think about that when you were asking me earlier, because it just sort of seems natural. But yeah, everyone always comments on how quickly I read.
And it's not like it's an effort. That's her natural speed. I believe we're being taught to read slowly in schools by the method that we're currently doing, where we're sounding out every single individual letter. We get in the habit when we're initially reading, we're reading slowly. And we stay with that. I have not even heard of teachers in elementary schools where they're trying to help people read more quickly. So, yet when you think about it, wouldn't you like to be able to read faster? I know I would, because I have so much to read that I spend many extra hours compared to what Keelan would do, for instance.
And my last question, sorry. Yeah. What do you see as a career path for yourself?
I don't know. Like, at 16, it's really hard to decide, considering, like, it took me forever to decide on a major. I just picked something that I liked. And then philosophy as a major, that's not really career-oriented. But, I don't know. I suppose I'll have to pick something when I go to graduate school. And I'm just counting on, when I take other classes in college, I think I'll know more of what I want to do, because then I'll see all the fields more and like what the careers would actually be in them. So.
And I just want to mention on her last answer, that's the first time I've even heard her say this, so I'm really enjoying this. And especially how when she goes to graduate school, it's not if she goes to graduate school, it's when she goes to graduate school, and I really like that a lot. So.
Well, because even though like philosophy is not career-oriented, it's a really good major for getting into grad school because you can apply it to a lot of other fields. So.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah.